This is a quick overview of how LXStudio works and what it is, everything I've been learning about as I've been building the Ascension pod. So we open up the repo and click play. This is the processing app, and it opens up in a different screen for me. 1 second, move it over here. Here we go. So the UI is incredibly confusing. There's no documentation that I could find about how it works, so it was a lot of guess and check. I hope that I might be able to reduce that for you a little bit. Let's see. The model, I typically always keep this tab as the model. I don't think this content stuff is actually duplicated over here as well, so I don't really look at that. I don't know what packages is. And then on the global side, I don't really know too much about these things. I also did nothing with respect to audio. So what I'm gonna teach you a little bit is the stuff in this model, these things down here, as well as the thing to the right over here, and then these modulation things, and then also a C. I also want to point out, the FPS stuff. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna go through. So these are your LED strips that are set up. We can press this ID thing to get it to like flash red. Well, let's see. Okay, there you go. So I've turned off the brightness for everything. It looks like these brightnesses are on, but they're not really. Actually, this brightness is on. I'm not sure why that's not working. You'll see in a second. You see this green bar here. This means these are grouped together. So both of these things work together in tandem. So I can click these, and this will show you what each of these strips are. And then I've also got this arc at the bottom. When creating them, I don't know how to actually move them around in the UI. I'm guessing there's a way, but I will literally like go create a strip. I'm like, okay, where did that strip go? I guess I have to click this to make sure that it's showing up. I'm not exactly sure. So a little, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I see it right here. So let's reduce the spacing to 2. I think these things are in like inches or some terrible unit like that. And then, you could go and move it around this UI. You can like rotate here. So you end up just playing with these parameters to be able to get it to the position that you want. There's also JSON, which I frequently edit. So you could also just do the calculation kind of in your head and then edit the JSON and then restart LXStudio and then see the changes. So I'm gonna, right clicking kind of doesn't work here. I don't know what reset value is, but backspace will delete that. And now looking at each of the strips, they've got a location. Also notice, by the way, that the UI tells you what these things are. So ID, it says it causes the fixture to flash red, which is what it's doing. Solo is this fixture. No other fixture will be illuminated. I'm guessing it's something like if I press S, yeah, only that. And then what is M? Oh, mutes this. Yeah, so mutes it. Okay, interesting. I don't know if there's any way to group these, but looking now, we've got like the number of LED points, which each point is going to have RG and B, and then there's some spacing, and then this is us sending stuff over a networking protocol. In this case, we're using ArtNet, just sending it locally, and then you pick the universe and channels as well. So for me, my universe is increased, and then the channel, this is kind of an offset, and it says offset down there. Cool. Don't exactly know what gamma correction is. Something about the brightness curve. I haven't played around with it. There's an FPS limit per strip. I never use that because I go do the FPS over there. And then I guess this is kind of a confusing global thing where if you click that, then that's kind of off for everyone. And then in addition, it's just identical to this button. So it's a little odd. Then there's camera angles that you can pick. Camera angles, I think, are. Oh, I see. Yeah, these are not. So these. This inspector is related to the fixtures, but the output and camera are not. Those are kind of separate. It's just like hard. Like output and camera are not related to this. It's kind of a confusing UI thing. Uh, let's see. I never click these buttons. Okay, gonna go down here so you can change, brightnesses of things. All of these channels, I think these are called channels, are running in parallel. So you can click this plus button over here to make a new one. This master thing, I don't really know too much about what it's doing. I would have thought that this would have totally changed the brightness of everything, but it doesn't. Um, there's a concept of recording. I don't know how that works, but you can like click these buttons, and then you can click this really hidden button over here that opens up something about clip recordings. I don't know how that works. And then you can get like kind of condensed versions of this. So now patterns can be created. So you can go and pick something, like maybe I will double click on the sparkle, and then you can only do one pattern at a time. So I would double click sparkle. Now it sparkles like this. And so patterns are on the left side, effects are on the right side. Effects modify patterns. So I can, for example, do this base mask thing, which I created, and it only does the base or only does the strips in this case. And so it's modifying the pattern here. I think you can probably have, yeah, multiple. So you can modify these by either pulling it. You can notice that this is like strobing faster and slower. I can right click and delete this. So it's strobing. It might be a little bit easier to see the strobe over here. Oh, except there's, oh yeah, sorry. So the effects are across all patterns. There's only one pattern per time, but there's always an effect on all the patterns. So you can also use your arrow keys once these have been selected. And you can see the shape kind of getting modified, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, so there's all these different parameters, and then this is kind of like programmable as well, but some of these are out of the box. This image one is not. This image one, by the way, is, I'll tell you in a bit about this image one. Okay. So that's that. You click this, double click, double click. Okay, and then stuff on the right. So there's these modulators that exist, and the cool thing is that you can kind of connect them over to things inside of this space. So if I look at gradient, for example, I can see how I think this says pre-countdown gradient. So this is attached to this over here. So as this is moving, it's moving this green bar, and you can see as I move this red thing, it's moving these red things right here. And then the green is going kind of down and up and down and up. This button, if you change it, it now only goes, the red's only on one side, so now it's down and up over there. And then you can change the modulation. So you can actually just have this up curve. If you double click on these, by the way, that resets them. So you can like change it and then double click, it resets it. So now I think what you'll see is this goes all the way up and then it resets to 0 again. Yeah, exactly. And then you'll also see it showing up here. Let's increase this period a little bit. Let me turn off this strobe so that it's more clear about what's happening. So it's going down and reset, down and reset. And then you can, decrease or increase that. Often these things are kind of confusing. Sync, I think, has to do with the audio here. Fast and slow just mean these are like preset settings right here. The way to attach this to something is, how do you do this? Disable, enable. I think like backspace or something. Okay, cool. So this button over here, you can see in the description down there, it says select a new target. So you basically click this and then it's giving you all these targets. You can go and click over here and now it's created the target. So this is attached to two things right now. It's also attached to post error gradient, which is over here, and then on the gradient side. Yeah. Notice when I click something just once, it shows me this UI, but it doesn't actually like change the pattern. So like if I click this, nothing happens, but if I double click it, we now get sparkles. So yeah, you can either have these modulators just kind of hard-coded in code, or you can kind of attach modulators with this right side thing. There's a couple other buttons. I don't know how triggers work. Add a new parameter. I don't know the difference between that. Select a new target. Add a new parameter mapping. I don't really know what that is. You can change your color, I guess. Cool. Yeah, that's cool. And there's pink over there. There's some. You can do non-looping stuff, and then there's also resetting. So now it's non-looping. You can reset it, and then this button goes off. So I guess the modulator on and off. So finally, there's some audio stuff. I didn't look at it. OSC does matter though, and this is receiving OSC inputs. So the thing is, if you write to any of these OSC things, like say I hover over this, the path is right there of the OSC. So it's LX/mixer/channel/1/fader. So if I write a value from 0 to 1, it's going to modify that. And I'll show you maybe in a second how to do that. Let me see if I can pause this recording. Okay, cool. So I open this up and the command, so this is the /1/fader. If I do this to 0.9, you will notice that this will change. So I just press enter and it changes. So that's kind of cool. So you can programmatically change a lot of the parameters that are going on in LXStudio. I'm gonna get this out of the way now and back here. And that only works when, you might have noticed there, but I was setting to localhost 3030 and that's why I'm setting it there. Don't know where those logs go here. There is some sort of logging that shows up here, but yeah, okay. But I don't know, I found it to not be that reliable, so I actually just write to a file sometimes in my patterns. And then I never edit inside of this thing, but I'll just show you inside of here anyways because we're here. How to kind of create your own patterns. So the thing to point you to is that the wiki actually is up to date and does kind of make sense about how this works. So it's good to look at both the example, and then also the wiki and see how those two map together. So let me go find that wiki. Okay, so if we go to the wiki here, these are all very helpful. So it tells you parameters are the things that you can modify, and so you go and kind of create a parameter, which is like, here's the label. It's going to start by default at 50, range from 0 to 100, and it gives you a knob. And there's a few other parameters. And yeah, it's generally pretty helpful. Modulators are sine waves or saw waves or anything that's changing over time. And so it's, I think, a common thing in the audio world where you will take one of these modulators and put it into something. And so you're doing that in the same way. You're like grabbing the current modulator value and then deciding what to do to your LEDs based on that. And then there's patterns and effects that I talked about. So you can create a pattern which then runs a run loop, and then you just like loop through all the points, and then you set the value, and then you've got effects which modify the value. So there's like kind of this like ownership concept that is worth looking at. If you look for, yeah. So you can, stuff will change underneath you when you're making an effect, but it won't. Yep, I'm a little bit sick. The reference, a little bit useful. You can also look inside of the core LXStudio code. So if you go here and then run arts and then the core library for LX, I think kind of the docs are largely auto-generated from this. Let's see. There's a couple other things. You can get custom UI for your patterns, which is kind of nice. Oh, haven't really looked at that. Haven't really looked at that. Haven't really looked at that or that. I kind of ignored this Raspberry Pi thing because I'm not running LXStudio on a Raspberry Pi. And I think I didn't really look at these things too much, but I don't know. It seems kind of useful. Oh, I see. It tells you like how to write fixtures in JSON, but the easier way is just edit it in LXStudio. And then the thing is, I'll kind of, yeah, maybe show you the JSON. Okay, so I'm in my LXStudio directory. These LXP projects, I think that's like stands for LXStudio project. It's just JSON. And so basically what I can do is I can go over to LXStudio, change something, like say, well, let me close this and then reopen it. Command R also run stuff. And we are going to change it to like 50 points instead. So there's like less points. I don't know if you can see it right there, but there are less points showing up. And then save, so it's unsaved, it's got a star there, save, it's now there. And then we can look at the git diff, and there's some timestamps and selected things, but here's the diff. So I'll often just commit the project whenever I change something inside of LXStudio. And then sometimes if I'm like, oh, I want everything to be 50, then I'll go and edit the JSON to get everything to be 50. And then reopen the project, and then it'll have those new settings working. Yeah, I think I think that's about it. And then the idea for patterns is you just go and create. So if I ls in here, oh, I didn't put them in that directory. All my patterns are just up here. So I like made, for example, rings.pde and spiral.pde. So the idea is you just make a new folder, kind of put it somewhere, and LXStudio will automatically grab it. It'll automatically make all the UI that you need. So it's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of it. I hated the onboarding process a lot, but hopefully this solves that one thing that I really hated, and otherwise it's kind of, you find it, I guess, pretty useful. Yeah. Maybe one other just comparison of LXStudio to other things. There's something called like LS or no, lights. Like IDE. Oh, it's called XLights. So kind of comparing this to another thing that outputs ArtNet. This, it doesn't have really good 3D support. It's like fake 3D support. And this kind of gives you a timeline. Let me see if I can actually go open it and just show you kind of what it looks like. It gives you more of a timeline. I mean, the UI is, oh, so bad. But what's happening here? Oh, sorry, I'm not clicking stuff. So you kind of like, you draw out all your different pixels, and then you have a sequencer, and then there's basically like this whole timeline thing. Sorry, a window popped out over here. And so you're like, make an animation, like run it at this, and then you end up being able to like drag different pre-built animations. So the upsides of XLights is that It's much more about like this predefined recording. In LXStudio, it's more like a live thing, but there's some pretty simple code that I wrote that will actually record a live set. So if you just do a live set, it will then kind of record it and you can play it back. But this is a little bit nicer because you can do a lot of things, like you can just be working on like a couple seconds right here and you can keep tweaking it, which is really nice. The huge downside of Xlights that I could find is that you can't really write your own patterns without writing um, like OpenGL shaders, which is very hard and esoteric to write. I think even in ChatGPT world. Um, and so a lot of people just use a lot of off-the-shelf things. The thing is, there's a lot of off-the-shelf things in LXStudio. There's not, because they have a really nice programming way so that you can just build whatever you want. But yeah, can't really do it in Xlights. Uh, so I don't know. I'm not a fan for that reason. Really, it's much more for toying around than actually making stuff that is more advanced. Um, yeah, and writing your own sequences ends up just, in my opinion, being much nicer. You could like figure out how to do it all here, but if you just have the ability to program, everything becomes much easier. And you just, if you have an idea, you can make it instead of having an idea and hoping that you can get something that kind of represents that idea that you have in your head. Okay, that was long, 20 minutes, but hope that was helpful.